How we doing? Mark with Workaday Custom Gunleather again, and today we're going to make a belt. In fact, we're going to make this belt. It's kind of a standard 1.5 inch belt, standard design, production. This is a gun belt. It's not a trouser belt. Gun belt because it's designed to hold a gun in positions, kind of be the anchor for your everyday carry and everything else that you're going to be carrying when you're carrying a weapon. So, couple things to keep in mind with a gun belt. For instance, on this one, and like any other gun belt you might have, one way you know it's a gun belt when you get it is that you cannot bend it in half top to bottom. Can't even start to bend this one in half top to bottom. Take another belt that you get off the department store rack, you can probably bend that right in half. That's one of the things you look for, and we'll go over some other things as we go through the video here as to what makes the gun belt a gun belt. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Any suggestions, something you'd like to see, or something you think can make the videos here better, let me know. I will let you know that I'm firing the cameraman. There's a couple scenes that you kind of don't really see what's going on, but that's quick, and we'll get through and I'll explain what's going on in the video as we do that. So again, any questions, comments, if you want to subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you on the other side. Talk to you later. And we start out with belt blanks. If you remember from my last video, when I buy a new side of leather, I haven't put a straight edge on the top side there. So from that, I'll cut 3 or 4 of these 1.5 inch belt blanks right off the bat. Make sure I get some good use out of that. Measuring that to length, I have templates for the end of the belt and also the buckle end. So I mark that out, measure it out, and that's going to be the top piece. The bottom piece will be a little shorter because the top one rolls around and holds the buckle in place. But we'll leave room for the buckle with the keepers. Those measured, matched up. This is the bottom piece coming here. I'll leave a little overhang on that. And then from there, I'm going to use barge cement. It's a 2-part, 2-stage contact cement. I'll bond these two together. They'll become one piece of leather very shortly here. Put that on. The barge cement actually sticks to itself. If you ever remember that from art class or other projects, once it dries, it's going to stick to itself. Very strong bond on that, and we'll put those together here shortly. That piece of paper actually comes from the supplier. That's what the leather comes wrapped in. So here I am putting this together. I'm going to guide that on. It's going to be pretty close. When I put that on, it's going to be pretty flat on the side, but we're going to true that up even a little more. So now that they're together, I'll finish punching that front end so that they match up, and then we're going to come over and put a really true edge on that with the sanding drum. When you get done, it shouldn't look like 2 pieces of leather put together. It should look like 1 piece of about 20 ounce leather. I start with 8 to 9 ounce. And this is the same leather I use for holsters. It's the same side of leather. So, and when I do projects where, such as in this case, that the customer is getting a belt, a holster, mag pouches, they all start with the same piece of leather. They end up dyeing very similar and matching very nicely. Here I'm putting the groove lines on. It's going to mark my stitching lines. It does 2 things. It gives me a line to stitch along, and also helps that stitching line sit below the surface just a little bit. And here are the sewing machine. Now, interestingly, after I get down the first side, I'm actually going to do 4 lines if you count top to bottom on the belt. Really, it's 1 stitch, but I double stitch those. The more you stitch a belt, or really any leather, or any even web gear, the more you stitch it, the stiffer it's going to get. That holds that material together and makes it stiffer. Now, if you'll notice, I get about halfway up this second turn pass, I run out of bobbin thread. You'll see that come by here. And there it comes, right? I can't see that until I turn the belt around and see that I run out of bobbin thread. I got to rethread that. To do that, I trim up where it ended off, overstitch a couple stitches, and then I got to be very careful because I use the same holes that I just punch going through the first time so that those don't show up. But then I'll make a couple passes back through to double stitch that. And this is probably the most nerve-wracking part of the process. It takes a lot of concentration. Be amazed how quickly you can get offline putting straight stitches, and if you do, how easily those show up. Several times I've started over on a belt because the stitching didn't line up. There's no way to fix it other than to start over. But this one turned out very nice. Take that off, trim it up, clean up those threads. And we're going to go work on the edges. I have an edger here. This basically just takes that sharp corner off of the leather, and then from there I'm going to burnish that down into a nice smooth clean edge on there. A little bit of water. That tool there is actually a baseball lacing hook, baseball for lacing up baseball mitts, but I use that to smooth the edge. Really, I take 4 full passes at this. On each side, I round that top edge and roll it to the middle. That's top, and then I do that on the bottom on both sides. So they come out as a nice radius edge. At this point, this step in the process, it's pretty smooth, but it's kind of pushed up on the edges a little bit. So the next step, you can see where I'm going to flatten those out. That's what I'm doing here. Kind of lay it flat on that carpet, bench top. Smooth that out so they're nice and radius into one another. Now we have a nice edge. We want to keep that nice edge, so I use what's called edge coat. In this case, brown. Gives it a nice contrast, but most importantly, it keeps those edges nice and clean, and they'll stay that way for a very long time. I have a belt I wear every day. Probably for the last 5 years, I've never had to re-edge coat that. That edge stays very nice, and it just burnishes more and more as you go along. But that edge coat does that. You'll see here that first pass, not too bad. I can hold on to the belt, but now that I'm on the other side, I can only use my fingertips to hold that belt. You'll see me shake my hand out there every now and then. My fingers actually start to fall asleep because I'm basically death gripping that belt with just my fingertips. When I get to the other end, get both sides done. Didn't smear anything, thank goodness. Do the top edges, which are not burnished down, but I just protect those edges. Now I'm going to punch the holes in. On a typical belt, I do 5 holes, the center hole being the target one. That should be the correct dimension for you. Larger belts, I get up over a 40-inch waist, I'll put 7 belt holes in there. That little wet spot I put my maker stamp on. And now when I cut the buckle and then the holes for the keepers, I punch through the first 2, and then the third piece of leather I punch through and put a screw in, put a Chicago screw in to hold that in position while I punch the other 2 through. Put the second one in, another Chicago screw, punch the third one, and then we're good to go. That way they line up. You can't measure those out. You really have to punch those together to get those to line up properly. I got those done. Now we're kind of in the home stretch. Put the dye on. This is a chocolate finish. I basically have 3 main finishes that I do for probably 95% of my work. Either oil, the natural russet oil, neat's foot oil finish, black, of course, and then this chocolate has become very popular lately. People see that chocolate, whether they see it on other pieces that I've done or on photos on my Facebook page. That chocolate seems to be very popular right now, so I do a lot of chocolate finishes on leather. Do the inside. I just want to darken that up because that inside of that buckle area would show through if you didn't. So it's dried, ready to go. Put on a Resinline top coat finish. Acrylic Resinline or neutral Resinline. It's a water-based product, but soaks into those pores and gives it a nice satin sheen, a nice professional finish, and just looks very done. And a really nice way to wrap that up. Now just putting the hardware on, kind of tedious part, but all the hardware goes on at the same time, and then we put the screws in. Because once you bend that over, you're not getting anything else on. So put that on, buckle on, and then put the Chicago screws in. Once those Chicago screws go in, we're pretty much done. Any questions on that, let me know. But we'll wrap this up here. And since those holes are lined up, screws go in pretty well, pretty easy. You gotta hold it pretty tight, but once they get started, those will hold for a long time. You gotta adjust them every now and then. They are screwed in, but they do pretty well. And I like the black finish on the Chicago screws. Lets the hardware kind of show through on the front side. It's always nice when you finish a project. This is kind of the fun part, where you see it ended up as a beautiful belt, functional gun belt, not a trouser belt. If you have any questions, comments, something you want to see, any suggestions, any projects you'd like to see me do on Gunleather, by all means, put it in the comments. I'll try and respond to those. And until next time, you have a good day and take care.